You're back here on Darkest Corners of the World. That was Hope by JP2 out of Florida, by way before that of Puerto Rico. And we're back here with Armin from Grind. Armin, we just wanted to talk to you about where you're from. So Flensburg in Germany. Germany has an amazing metal tradition that certainly in my boyhood I was loving. Things like bands like Creator, Sodom, Flesh Crawl, taking it a little bit outside the metal realm, things like Rammstein, KMFDM, I'm a massive fan of. Atari Teenage Riot, I was absolutely thrilled to see those guys on your playlist of influences. And other stuff like, for me, Einstürzende Neubauten are a huge, huge band that I love. There's so much great creativity these days. Friends of Darkest Corners of the World, Breathe Your Last out of Hamburg, Terrorist in Mind, also out of Germany. Can't forget Morgoth. I've talked way too much, but tell me about Germany. Tell me about Flensburg. Tell me about what it is to follow in those footsteps.
Yeah, well, you mentioned lots of the names that were influencing us, especially when we started playing music in the 90s. So we grew up in the 90s, especially musically, which was a perfect time back then. So many decisive recordings were released, especially in the first half of the 90s when it comes to death metal releases and such. And you mentioned some of our heroes like, Flesh Crawl, Morgoth with Cursed. I think it was 91 when it was released. And of course, Creator. They are so great, releasing on such a high level since decades, and we were following their career. And actually, I got a funny story about Creator related to René, our guitarist and one of the lead singers. When he was, 13 or something, so roughly 30 years ago, he was already very much into music and playing with mostly older guys just because of his talent. And those older guys were about to participate in a Creator gig in Hamburg, which is from Flensburg, something like 2 hours down south, and he wanted to go. And there was no way around it. And his parents refused. They said, "No, you are too young." And then he was so desperate. He said that he will run away from home just in case they don't let him go. And his parents were they didn't know what to do, how to react on that, because he was so serious about it. And it was René's mother who had the idea 30 years ago to look up Mille from Creator in the telephone book of Essen, the hometown. You might have seen that Trash Alten Essen documentary on YouTube once, which is sure. I can only recommend that one. So she looked him up in the telephone book and gave him a ring. And that guy was so cool 30 years ago that Mille talked to René for an hour about how to write the perfect metal riff, the perspective of a metal career, and all the teenage stuff René had on his mind back then. And of course, he convinced him to stay at home and to wait for the next tour. So that was...
His mother would have been absolutely thrilled.
So it must be a terribly cool guy, that Mille from Creator. But you mentioned all the names. They were responsible for our sound, especially when we were playing death metal in the 90s. And yeah, you mentioned Flensburg as our hometown. Yeah, well, we started very early. So we started in the early 90s playing in various death metal and grindcore bands in Flensburg, which had a very vital metal scene back then. And our sound was very much influenced by the German metal bands, as we talked about, but also influenced by the Scandinavian ones. And we played there for a couple of years in various bands, but shared stage on small festivals and gigs. And then, as it is, we moved on. Then we left town for universities all over Germany, and most of the guys are living all across Germany now. And this is another good thing about technology, that we stayed in contact all the time and shared music, shared records, and shared riffs, since we kind of reunited and formed the project Grind 3 years ago. We came together after kind of a 25 years long musical journey.
What was the what was the explosion? What was the moment? What was the thing that made it happen, that made you guys start again together?
It was an initiative by René. René was driving that project. It was his brainchild. And the major motivation for all of us was to write some very heavy songs. That was basically it. And
I like that motivation.
It might sound a little bit small, but actually that was the basic idea. And then that project evolved. So it started with writing some good songs, and then it evolved and became the idea of recording them. We looked out for a good studio and a guy who is producing that stuff with us and is able to add something to it, adding some modern touch to the production. And then we recorded those 10 songs we wrote in only 5 songwriting sessions. So that is kind of unusual. We met 5 times and wrote those 10 songs, and then we recorded them.
I think that's awesome. I think the spontaneous, that spontaneous thing where you don't play with something too much and it really captures that initial energy. I think for you guys coming back together and playing, I'm starting to get a sense of where that energy came from. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, there was no big intention. There was no pressure. There was nothing. There was just the joyful moment of playing music again together as good friends who already played in bands together 25, 30 years ago. That was just the momentum we shared. And that this was leading to that record deal, that this was leading to an interview with a guy sitting in Perth, nobody saw that coming, that's for sure.
Okay, so we're going to throw to another song in just a second. We have a band called Rituals out of Newcastle in England. A bunch of young guys that are bringing some sort of new metal core kind of feels. A really, really great piece of vocal work again on this song. Cannot speak highly enough for the arrangement. Very modern production. Like I said, it's got that new metal sort of revival or metalcore kind of feel to it. But look, an absolutely wonderful hooky chorus, some really great modern production aesthetics. This single is out now, actually. It's just gone out April 4th, so in this past week. Really proud to be giving it a spin today on Darkest Corners of the World. Here are the boys from Newcastle in England, Rituals, with their song POV. That was POV by Rituals. And we're still here with Armin from the band Grind, talking about their fantastic album, Songs of Blood and Liberation. Armin, your sound is amazing. It's so authentic and so real. What do you put that down to?
Well, what we wanted to do is we wanted to have a heavy album recorded. That was our mission. And for that reason, we didn't want to kind of blow up production. We wanted to have riff and focus, and for that reason, we recorded with lots of loud amps, and that's basically it. And most important, not that much a big post-production thing with faking and cheating. That is not us. But we also wanted to avoid to sound like old guys in too tight metal shirts. For that reason, we kind of hired a producer who is, I think, in the middle of the 20s or something. And he's doing